Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. I think it's safe to say that Saturday's No King protests were a rousing success. Protests that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called the farthest left, the hardest core, the most unhinged in the Democratic Party, which is a big title. Republican Senator Roger Marshall called a Soros-paid-for protest full of, quote, professional protesters, and House Majority Whip Tom Emmer said it was an event for the, quote, terrorist wing of the Democratic Party, drew over 7 million regular Americans to thousands of demonstrations across the country, with at least one protest being found in every one of the 48 continental United States, with 200,000 people showing up to a protest in the nation's capital. While those on the right told us we would see armed Antifa dressed in black, Molotov cocktails in hand, burning American flags and being violent, that couldn't be farther from the truth of what we actually saw. These were peaceful protesters, just regular American citizens, not being violent, coming with a positive energy, bringing their families, young and old, all expressing their constitutional right to publicly air their grievances about the way the government is handling everything, and specifically with the administration and President Donald Trump himself. Those on the right repeatedly fearmongered that these protests were going to be violent events needing law enforcement, possibly even deploying the military to subdue the violent protesters. But as it turned out, the only violence at those protests were those supporting Donald Trump attacking peaceful protesters. 22 arrests were made over 11 states such as North Carolina, Florida, Virginia, Kentucky, and Texas of Make America Great fans attacking and assaulting protesters, while at the same time there was zero arrests made of, quote, left-wing violence. If anything, we saw politically motivated violence is alive and well, but entirely coming from the right onto the left, not the other way around. And in that ways, these protests were a resounding success. They entirely failed as a piece of right-wing propaganda to show that the left is violent and they're all agitators that hate America, and put on public display just how much the right are violent bullies. As many have said, and rightfully so, the accusation that the left are all violent are really just confessions from the right. And to that end, I was fairly confident this was going to be it. This was going to be the time that Donald Trump said, I have had it, just go full dictator, invoke the Insurrection Act, and just telling the military to shoot the protesters. I was sure we were going to wake up Sunday morning to images that made Kent State look like nothing, with photos that could just as easily have come from Gaza than the United States, a 21st century Boston massacre, but on a massive scale. I felt like the president was just desperate enough that he might have considered it and might have done it. And while I can't say with any confidence that he didn't want to, I can say that he didn't, and we're all better off for that. And while he wasn't able to call a military strike on his political enemies, he did do something. And in typical Donald Trump fashion, the thing that he did involved a social media post. Because while he can seem to never find it in him to be a competent leader, he always finds time for social media. Using his Truth Social account, the President of the United States of America posted an AI-generated video of him flying a fighter jet labeled King Trump while wearing a king's crown, flying over the protests and dumping a brown liquid that was clearly meant to be liquefied feces upon the protesters, all set to Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone, made famous in the film Top Gun. So this is a nearly 80-year-old man, a world leader, publicly posting a video of him effectively defecating on his enemies. To say something of this nature goes way below the dignity of his office, practically goes without saying, as does the fact that no other president in history would do something like this. Shameful seems almost an understatement, yet his base could not get enough of this video. They loved it, with many praising it and saying it only made them more proud to call Donald Trump their president. And I suppose, given how they are and who they're supporting, that doesn't come as much of a surprise. surprise. And I think really speaks to their hypocrisy, since if the roles were reversed and this was, say, a video of Joe Biden flying a jet plane and defecating on them, they would be incensed. Not that they would ever make such a thing, but of course, because it's their man and he's doing something that the people they don't like, it's not only acceptable, it's praiseworthy. And the responses by these right-wing Trump fans is almost comical. Many, of course, still repeating the tired refrain that we don't have a king, because if we had a king, you all couldn't even be protesting in the first place. When, of course, the No Kings moniker is not protesting against the king we have. It's saying we do not want our leader to act like a king and effectively crown himself as one. And of course, those are missing the point intentionally, while inadvertently outing themselves as ignorant and foolish. And it wasn't just that. I saw comments that were saying how it was a disrespect to Donald Trump and the presidency, and how could those protesters dare to show the world how disrespectful they are to their president. As if A, the rest of the world isn't already extremely aware of just how awful he is. B, that a guy who would publicly display a video of him defecating on his rivals from a jet airplane deserves respect. And C, the incredible hypocrisy from these people who were the exact same that were calling the last president a senile old man, or the Democrat president before him as a illegal Kenyan who needed to be deported. So these people love to cry about showing respect for the president when they never showed any respect for the president when it was of the opposing party. This sort of blatant hypocritical double standard is in no way surprising, but it's just frustrating when they demand respect but refuse to give respect. If respect is truly something that is earned, Donald Trump certainly has not earned it. And I think that's one of the important things this protests put into sharp relief. So much of Donald Trump and the administration's perceived power requires the notion that they have absolute power and absolute respect. It is through that intimidation factor that they can project the air of power, and millions of people coming out to protest against him and say that he is not someone to be feared. He is not someone who deserves respect. He does not have absolute authority. The illusion is entirely dispelled, much like in the scene in The Wizard of Oz where the man behind the curtain is revealed as the supposed great and powerful wizard. You can't fear a small man who needed to hide behind the projected visage to wield his authority. His power comes from the perception of having power, the perception of being someone who is great and powerful. And all those protesters coming out against him ripped away that curtain and exposed him for the weak, small man that he has always been. So from that perspective, I totally get why him and the administration and all of his followers really are bothered by the protests, and why leading up to them they were so fixated on painting everyone that was participating as either a paid protester or an evil Antifa that all just hate America, because millions of regular Americans all voicing their displeasure and lack of faith and respect in the presidency and the administration. It completely tears away their illusion of power and therefore their power itself. They cling so tightly to those lies and delusions because that's all they have. Blind devotion is all they've got. Once you take that away from them, they've got nothing. And what's worse, it could make the faithful start to question their loyalty and devotion. And then everything the Republicans have built begins to fall apart. Donald Trump is their figurehead, their godhead, their messiah. If he doesn't have the unquestioned loyalty and respect of the people, he has nothing. And they have nothing as a result. Once you've pulled the curtain back and shown a weak, small man for what he truly is, it's impossible to put it back. And I think in that lies the key. We have to keep this up and remind everyone everywhere that Donald Trump is not a man to be feared or respected. He is weak and small, and he has no power if you don't allow him to have it. All the AI videos of him in fighter jets dropping stuff on his enemies can't change that. The administration is losing the messaging battle, and they know it. We just have to keep it up, because ultimately what's good and right will always win over falsehoods and lies. And that's what truly matters. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off another slice of news.